Welcome to the raw and uncensored Ambitchious Podcast. During our time here together, I will be instilling all of the strength, power, and determination you will need to use the very stones thrown at you to build your ultimate empire. We will redefine the word bitch from the derogatory to the acronym being in total control of herself. So let's adjust our crowns and prepare to live life ambitiously. Yeah, here I am, the original HBIC, Katie motherfucking Boyd. And on today's installment of the Ambitchious Podcast, do I have a tasty treat for you. My ride or die, my main man, other than Big Bernard, but the real man in my life is Mr. Ed Sullivan. Hello.
Hello, I'm back.
All the girls always talk about you. They're like, where's Ed Sullivan? And now we have you here.
Well, usually we're not in the same spot anymore.
I know, it's sad, but I love it.
Yeah, it's sad, but...
No, but this is good.
Oh, this is good.
Because we just had lunch.
Oh my God, it was delicious.
Ed, I always make Ed some kind of beef product. He's very meat forward.
I love me some meats.
And you love some taters.
And taters.
So we did some short ribs and we did some mashed potatoes. And then Ed always brings over to my house every time we do anything that has to do with the Ambitchious Podcast. He always bakes something delicious, which I told him he needs to open his own bake shop.
And those cookies today? Ooh, next level stuff.
I had a mouthgasm. I actually had two mouthgasms because I had two cookies.
Yeah. I'm going to shuffle a little bit, even though we're live, because I have to turn my head to see your beautiful face.
Oh, my God.
I'm going to move a little bit.
Let's move.
You talk, I'll move.
Move your body. So, okay, the reason why Ed is on this podcast today is I have hundreds of emails that come in and DMs and smoke signals and ravens with their claws. They bring me the notes on the scrolls and they say, Katie, I want to start a podcast. How do I start a podcast? Should I start a podcast? And I say, you know what? I'm going to get Ed on this podcast because he's going to fuck you up with some beautiful truth.
Now, how long have you been doing this? About 4 years?
We're going to be on our fifth year in July.
Wow.
Okay. That seems crazy to me.
Now, I don't know if you remember when you started and you came to talk to us. And
I do remember.
We spent, the better part of an hour trying to talk you out of doing it.
Easily. And I was like hell-bent. I'm like, no, I'm doing this. I know that this is in me. God put this on my heart to help as many people as I can through my Ambitchious Podcast. And you said, are you smoking crack?
Well, here's the thing about podcasting, right? When people do it well, they make it look very easy.
Agreed.
I don't know if, the listener thinks, well, Katie just sat down and talked for a while.
No.
And how much prep would you say you spend for each one?
Oh my gosh. So I don't prep as much now because now I just it's like, I don't know, it comes second nature to me.
Right. And
so now what I do is I kind of I know what I want to talk about and then I bullet point. But before I would spend literally a week just Googling and researching and making my notes and typing up everything and making it perfect and making sure that everything came off the right way. And then you have to actually be able to think and speak on your feet. That's the hard part.
Exactly. So I would say if somebody's considering starting a podcast, number one, you got to know your why.
Yes.
Why do you want to do this? And if it's to become famous, probably not going to happen.
Yeah, you're barking up the wrong tree.
If it's to make money, probably not going to happen. If it does, it's like any other business. You're going to have to bust your ass for 3 or more years before you start to see any returns on it. At least. And if you think that you're going to make money from advertising, you are probably mistaken.
Yes.
You need to have a minimum of 5,000 downloads per episode.
To even think about going to someone and saying, hey, do you want to sponsor this podcast?
Correct. And that will give you somewhere around $20 to $25 per 1,000 downloads.
Oh my God.
All right, so you take a commercial for your 5,000 downloads and maybe you get $100.
Yeah. I don't get out of bed for less than 10,000 a day. I'm like Linda Evangelista.
So I think people have to really understand the reason for doing it.
Yes.
And then understand the commitment to it.
Now, when you obviously do podcast, you've been doing podcasts for how long? How long have you been in the podcast game?
6 years.
Okay. So when people come to you and they're like, I want to start a podcast, what do you see as the reason why? Because people are dumb as fuck.
Yes.
And people just tell you the dumbest shit possible, and you just look at them like, what the fuck is wrong with you? What do they say is the reason usually that they want to? Like, what are is it to become rich and famous? Do people say that out loud?
To become famous is
Shut
one of the
up.
goals.
Are you serious?
Sure.
I don't know about that.
To make money.
No.
And, I think some will say, well, I just want to help people.
Yes.
Fair enough, but you've still got to get something out of it yourself.
Yes.
Or it's not going to be sustainable.
There has to be some kind of an equal energy exchange in some way, because in the long run, and we were talking about this before we got on the podcast, and I said, how I'm doing my new podcast format is like I do 3 months of podcasting and I take a month to myself just to rejuvenate myself, because I've been doing this for almost 5 years. And what happens is it feels like you're feeding a beast, like every week. Okay, I got to get another podcast. I go, what's the podcast about this week? What am I going to talk about? Who's the guest? And then it just gets to be not fun.
Right.
If you're not, at least if you're making some money, you're like, okay, well, this is bringing in some kind of income. Yeah. But as you just said, for years, there may be no return on investment.
Yeah, and it's not always fun.
Nope. There's been many tears in this room.
Yeah.
There's been lots of frustration. I've had to email Ed many a day and say, hey, I just did a 2-hour podcast and it's gone. So-and-so came on the podcast and her fucking computer just shit the bed at the end. This person didn't show up even though I had them scheduled and I sent them 32,000 reminders. Like, this is just the nature of the beast.
It's the way it goes.
Yeah.
It can be very frustrating.
Oh, yeah.
So, before we even get into how do you do it?
Yeah.
There's the whole question of content, right?
Yes.
What is the show going to be about? Mm-hmm. And you'll ask some people and they'll say, well, I'm just going to talk about whatever, like Joe Rogan.
I feel like going into the corner right now and spanking my monkey. Why do people think that they're going to be Joe Rogan? Joe Rogan's a fucking famous stand-up comedian, and he actually has some of the top people in the world in their fields who carry most of his podcast, by the way.
Correct.
And he also has probably $1 million worth of sponsorship.
Yeah.
He's selling his rubber underwear, he's selling his rubber mattress, he's selling these greens. I mean, he's making a lot of fucking money.
He's got full-time people helping him.
A whole staff.
Sure.
He's not just coming into a closet like I used to do it when we all went into freaking COVID,
So, I think you have to, first off, understand, what's this podcast going to be about?
Okay. So number one, what is it about?
Yeah.
Ask yourself that question.
Once you decide that, then try to take it down to a more narrow topic.
So niche. What's the niche?
Niche is the best way to go.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Because if you're talking to everyone, you're talking to no one.
If you try to, be everything to everybody, you're going to miss.
That's right.
It'll be a strikeout.
I tell this to all the people I coach, and in business especially, they're just like, I'm going to be a coach. Well, who are you coaching?
Right.
Anyone that wants to give me money and coach with me. Yeah, but what do you specialize in? Exactly. Or do you specialize in women who are divorced or women who are grieving or, what people who like pink socks? I don't know what the hell it is, but it has to be something very specific.
Brings me to the next point. You got to think about your avatar.
Yes.
Right?
Ideal client.
Who is the person that's listed? Who are you trying to talk to?
Yes.
And I think once you decide this, then if you can't sit down and write out very quickly a year's worth of topics,
don't do it.
You're going to have trouble.
Don't do it. That's actually what I did. And this is before I even knew you. Yeah. Before I knew that, anything about you, I sat with my notebook and I said, okay, I'm going to write down 52 topics that I know I can do a year's worth of podcast, because that's the thing is people they do 2 or 3 podcasts and they're like, okay, now what? What am I going to do about now? And then that's right. And then that's when you start pulling teeth And then you start to psych yourself out because you're like, did I make a mistake? And this is usually, and this is another thing we can talk about too down the road, is this is usually after someone has spent sometimes hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on equipment.
Yep.
Right. So you get this whole podcast set up with the top of the line shit. And then you do 3 podcasts and you're like, this isn't for me.
Right.
No, like it can't be that way.
You really have to think about it on the front end. It's not something to just jump into.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even with you starting, you went to a studio that could help with all the technical aspects
That's
of
right.
it.
Because I didn't know anything.
No.
Literally, like I didn't know anything. I didn't know. And I did a lot of research, but not to the point where it's like, how do the podcasts get out into the podcast world?
I think you did enough research to realize I'm not doing this.
Oh, 1,000,000%. Because I'm also a smart bitch in where I believe that there's a seat for every ass.
Yep.
So there is an Ed Sullivan out there who loves the sound components and the mixing and all this bullshit. I think about that and my asshole puckers and I want nothing to do with it. I'm the talent. I like to show up, drop the knowledge, peace out. And I want the people who actually enjoy doing that stuff to do those things for me, because that's another thing that holds a lot of people back in all aspects of life, not just in the podcast world, is they think they're going to do everything. They're going to do the marketing. They're going to do the social media. They're going to do all the voice. They're going to do the sound. They're going to do the music. I mean, there's so many things that go into a podcast in itself.
Right. And, some folks don't have the money to go hire.
Thank God I'm a rich bitch.
Then they have to understand it's a huge time commitment, because first you have to learn how to do this.
Yes.
And then you have to go ahead and do all of that work.
And you have to have the time in your schedule to do it, because there's nothing worse than rushing out a podcast because you fuck it up every time.
And if it's not good, it's not worth putting out.
Don't put it out. You know how much shit I've done and I've recorded and I'm like,
no.
Like I actually did. Oh my God. Can I confess something to you? You probably know this about me, but I was having some angry moments in the fall of 2022.
Oh, did you have a really angry one?
So I did a podcast, Why No One Fucking Likes You. Did you hear it? We got to find it.
Really?
So I was like, I'm fucking angry and I'm sick of people and everyone's fucking assholes. And I just came down here and I just fucking unleashed on the microphone.
Yeah.
And like in my mind at that moment, I'm like, this is going to be a bomb ass podcast. But then I slept on it. And then the next day I started thinking about all the things that I said. And I'm like, no, this is too aggressive.
I'm sure it was very cathartic.
Oh, it felt so good.
About it.
Yeah. And you know what? We might just keep it in the archives.
Right.
And maybe I'm feeling really salty one day and we just like drop it. Or maybe we drop it as like a bonus. Like if anybody really wants to hear this podcast,
or when you decide you're done anyway, just put
drop
that
it
out as the last one on the feed.
Exactly.
The other thing I want to encourage people maybe not to do is decide, I'm just going to interview all the best and brightest in this field.
But here's the deal too. How do you, as someone who's, no offense, you're a fucking nobody, find these people? Because here's the deal. I'm not a nobody, but I'm definitely not a Joe Rogan by any stretch of the imagination. So even me, like I'll reach out to people. They want to know how many downloads do you have? Who's your sponsors? How many listeners? All this stuff. So if you don't have good numbers, they're going to tell you to go pound sand.
Guess what? To get a guest on the podcast, what would you say? A dozen back and forth emails by the time?
A dozen?
Yeah.
Like try like at least 40.
Right. So if you have to do that every week, it becomes a lot of aggravation and effort.
And the best is when you have them nailed down and then that day, they farted and shit themselves, on the way to dropping off their child at Catholic school, and now they can't do it. And your whole day just got fucked because you planned on podcasting with this person.
And, maybe you had already rescheduled it. Now it's a day before your podcast is supposed to go out.
And what do you do? You got to just whip something out of your ass and make that podcast happen.
It won't be that good.
Nope. And as you know, because we've talked about this so many times, is like you have to treat your podcast as if it was a television show. Right? Like people say every Friday at 8 p.m., I'm watching my favorite television show.
Yep.
If you say for me, it's like I always say, see you next Tuesday. So they know every Tuesday, unless I'm taking a break. Every Tuesday at this time, that podcast is going to be in there, however they're listening to it.
Wherever they get it from.
And guess what? If you don't, they stop trusting you.
Well, they fill in the gaps with something else.
Right.
Well, usually I listen to Ambitchious, but this isn't. Well, let me find another podcast.
That's right. And you may lose listenership. And that's actually something I was thinking a lot about when I said I'm only going to do these like pockets of podcasting. Yep. I know for a fact, because I look at my numbers and stuff, I know for a fact that there are people who are listeners. They're very loyal. They've been loyal. But now they start being like, okay, this bitch is gone for 4 weeks because she's, flicking her bean in another country, like living her best life. I'm not going to keep listening to her. I found somebody else.
Right.
So you have to, and I had to say to myself, my mental health and my time and all the things that I'm doing, I will lose some listeners because I need to take care of myself.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Whereas, like, as you know, Joe Rogan, he's doing like what, 2 podcasts, 3 podcasts a week, and they're like 3 fucking hours long.
Yeah. But all he has to do is show up.
That's right. Because he has a
He's
full-blown
got
team.
Scheduling, the guests. He's
just getting high and he's rolling up in there with his flannel shirt on.
Exactly.
Yeah, full of elk, whatever he killed that week outside of his backyard.
That's the next part of it for commitment. Is this something you can do every week?
Yes.
The most important thing is to be consistent.
Yes.
So, often I tell people when you're starting, think about every other week.
Yes.
Now, once a month doesn't have enough frequency to it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe once you've established an audience, but from the get-go, I don't think you want to start at anything less than every other week.
And don't overpromise and then underdeliver, because I see that a lot too. They're like, I'm podcasting 3 times a week, and then all of a sudden they fucking like do it for a month, and they're like, I want to put a gun in my mouth.
Yeah,
because it's a lot of work.
And consistency pays off.
That's right.
Because most are not consistent.
Right. Absolutely.
How many podcasts do you think are out there right now?
Oh, millions.
2.5 million.
So, yeah, I knew it was a lot.
How many podcasts do you think published an episode in the last 7 days?
Tell me.
47,000.
Shut up.
So only about 3% of the podcasts that are out there.
That is mind-blowing.
An episode in the last week.
What?
Yes.
That's insane.
It's definite. And, a lot of those are the big ones, right?
Yeah. Well, it's like, what is that old Sopranos saying? It's like, everyone wants to be a gangster until it's time to do what gangsters do.
Right.
And it's the same shit with this. And I always say, like, everybody wants to be Katie motherfucking Boyd. They think it's cute because they see, like, from the outside looking in, it's like, they don't realize, like, what the grind actually looks like to make these things happen.
It's a lot of work.
Like, you came in today before we ate and you were like, you're going like gangbusters. You're taking people to Portugal. You're doing another Bitchapalooza. You're doing this. You're doing that. And I'm like, I don't see myself like that because that's just by baseline homeostasis. Like, this is just how I show up. But I think it takes kind of a sick fuck to do this kind of work. And I don't think a lot of people, and we talked about this before too, is you were like, I'm going to get on there and I'm going to tell the truth and I'm going to almost like talk people out of it. And I said, do that, because I am so sick of people coming to me like, I want a podcast about blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, yeah, you'll get 5 podcasts. You'll get sick of it. You'll run out of shit to talk about. You'll spend thousands of dollars on all this equipment and no one's going to fucking listen to you.
And here's the bad news.
There's more?
When you start, it's going to be horrible.
Horrible. I listened to my old podcast.
Did you?
I don't recommend that if you want to feel good about yourself in life. Like, if you want your self-esteem to be intact, don't listen to like old videos you've done or old podcasts. But I listen to old podcasts of myself sometimes just to keep myself a little like grounded. Yeah. And I'm like, damn, like, you were so robotic and you were nervous and you wanted like everything was like perfect.
You were scripted.
Yes. And now like,
because you were, well, am I going to miss something?
Yes. And especially when you're speaking on something where you really truly want to educate people.
Right.
You don't want to lose things. You don't want to miss things. And then you don't also want to have all of the keyboard warriors that are living in their mother's basement eating Cheetos.
Yeah.
Like, you missed something,
But you know what? Nobody wants to hear somebody read.
No. So true.
They want it to be real, like a conversation.
The best podcast, I think, in my opinion of myself, is the ones that was just like fun, laughing, and just like having a conversation. Yeah.
So what I say is sort of a sweet spot. And as you know, I do Cigar Authority.
Yes. Tell them about Cigar Authority. Because a lot of the girls obviously are not cigar
They're not
connoisseurs.
cigar smokers.
Some of them are, though.
So we're into our 13th year with the show.
That long?
Yep. 2 hours.
Wow.
Never missed a show. Every Saturday live.
Shout out to my boy, Dave Garofalo. We love Dave.
I guess this year Christmas was on. Oh, no, Christmas Eve was on the Saturday.
That's right.
We did pre-record and just premiere it,
Yep.
So every now and then you have to.
Yeah.
But what we try to do is what I would call infotainment.
Yes, I love that.
We're giving information, but we're entertaining as well.
Yep.
So we have different segments
Yep.
where the games, when was this person born, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Spend a lot of time shitting on each other.
I love that. Like Big Bernard and Katie Boyd. I love a good shit on.
The Boston ball busting, I guess you would call it.
Yes, that's what we do best.
So that's a different vibe. There's 4 of us on the show.
And it's 2 hours long.
2 hours.
And Dave obviously has sponsors.
About 30.
Wow. Can you imagine? But listen to what Ed's saying, guys, out there.
13 years.
13 years.
I think he didn't get his first one for just over 3 years.
Seriously.
Yeah.
But remember as well, to go back to what we were talking about before, the Cigar Authority is a niche podcast.
Very niche.
They're just talking about cigars. They smoke cigars on the podcast. They talk about the flavor profiles and all these different things. So men and some women, but mostly your listenership is men.
98%.
Yeah, I would have thought so. So 98% of those people are ordering cigars. They want to know what cigars to get. And like you guys are selling it in a way where it doesn't feel like you're being sold to, which I think is a knack.
Right.
Not many people can do that.
Not many people can.
Dave's a professional.
Right. So this is another important point. He didn't set out to make money from the podcast.
Yes.
He just hit a situation with tobacco products where nobody would take his advertising.
That's right.
And he wanted to advertise. So he thought, I'll make a show. And it really took that amount of time to figure out, I can get manufacturers to advertise. But then he realized, I can build my online business by selling the cigars.
So all the cigars that you guys smoke on the podcast.
They are available at twoguyscigars.com. That's
awesome.
the number 2,
Yep.
guyscigars.com.
And so you guys smoke, and then you guys talk about all the different cigars, and then all of those cigars on that podcast that week are available to purchase.
You can buy the care package.
The care package is what you guys talk at. But how fucking genius is that? Dave is a damn genius.
He's got over 1,000 people subscribe to the care package
every week
at an average of $30 per month.
Do the math, people.
Yeah.
But that's the shit. So people have to think outside the box. They have to think long term. They have to, I always tell people this too. And this is not just podcasts. This is anything in the business world. You have to think big picture long term. And most people, as you know, because I'm sure you see it all the time because you've been in this industry for a long time and you've produced a lot of people's podcasts, is they quit right before the miracle happens. Like right before they're going to launch and take off, they quit because they just get tired and bored and overwhelmed and they start to second guess themselves. And I said, and I think you probably can attest to this, I said, I'm doing this.
Yep.
This isn't I'm not going to do this for 3 weeks or whatever. This is something I'm going to do until it's not fun anymore.
Yep.
And that's why I started taking these breaks, because at the end of the podcast, I would be fucking so tired by the end of the time that I was podcasting. And now guess what? I'm going to take a month off every 3 months and I'm going to rejuvenate myself. And that's how I keep it fresh.
Yep.
But most people, as you know, because you see this too, they'll just keep pushing their agenda because they think that they have to.
Right.
And I know for a fact, because I listen to many podcasts, you can start to hear when the person doing the podcast starts to hate it.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, I thought it was just me.
100%.
It starts to get yucky. The vibe goes down. They don't have good guests, or they don't have good meaty things to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you're someone who is just an entertainment type person where and there are podcasts that do very well that they just talk shit, gossip, whatever, but that's not what most podcasts really are about.
No. And, I would say people also need to think about what success looks like for them. If you're just chasing number of downloads, it's not going to be successful.
Absolutely.
You and I have talked, and you're like, well, I want more downloads. And then I'll say, well, why?
Yeah.
Do you not have enough? No, I can't handle all the business I have.
Yes.
Right.
Then you're like, what the fuck is, why do you care?
Yeah. So,
and that's when my ego steps in.
yeah, but it's really about, I say to people, okay, would you rather have 1 million people and only 1% of them will buy a product that you recommend?
Yes.
Or do you want 1,000 where you've got, 50% of the people
That's right.
will go get the product? So
I have so many clients and friends who are very famous, right? They're famous Hollywood stars or reality television stars or whatever. And they'll have, say, like 5 million people that are following them on, say, Instagram.
right.
And they'll have like a makeup line. And I'll say to them, well, how many people convert into buying your makeup from your podcast? And they'll say, I'm not podcast, excuse me, your Instagram. And they'll say, none. And I'm like, what the fuck is the point of having 5 million people following you if you can't hawk your shit? And then for someone like me, I have maybe 5,000 and change people following me, but 10% every month convert into sales.
And 10% is huge.
In this world, it is.
So audience engagement is really what you're looking for, not just big numbers.
Yes. So when you say audience engagement, can you give our listeners out there that maybe are wanting to start a podcast some tips on how to engage your audience?
Well, first you got to get an audience, right? No, and
I love you.
That is really
it's
difficult.
real. It's real.
Right. If you don't already have a social media following and you say to yourself, I'm going to make a podcast and get a following,
no,
you're not.
That's not how it works.
No.
Nope.
And, a lot of people, when they're getting going, spend more time on the marketing side than the time they're putting into the podcast.
100%.
It's another big piece of
and that
the
falls
work.
flat.
Yeah.
Because it's like you can market your balls off, but if no one wants to listen to your podcast because it's not meat and potatoes enough, who the hell cares?
And so part of it is being patient. I mean, if you've got no social media following and you get 5 downloads on the first podcast, it's a win.
You're winning.
You're
winning.
Really.
I always think of the downloads as people. Like you have to, it's not just a download, like a number.
And
think of it as like a human being.
Right,
Someone
so
out there is listening to what you're saying.
If people say, well, I only got 100. Well, what if you were sitting in a room talking
Yes.
to these 100 people?
Oh my God. Are you kidding me? Like that's massive.
It's massive.
Massive.
So you really have to have the right perspective going into it.
But I think that social media and how we all are showing up in this day and age has jaded people. Like they think if they don't have 5 million followers on Instagram or they're not viral on TikTok, they're never going to do anything. It's like, again, no.
Well, and Dave, it's funny because he was talking to one of the manufacturers and they said, I got, 1 million likes on this thing I put on Instagram.
No one gives a fuck.
Well, Dave said, so did you take those to the bank? And what did they give you for those?
It's so true. It's so true.
So I think you want to go in with a business sort of attitude.
Yeah, and I did. And I actually, it was one of the things, I think you can say that about me. It's like, I wanted to, obviously, I always say to all of the girls that I coach in a business sense, you want to entertain, you want to educate, and you want to empower.
Yep.
In anything you do, whether it's the content on your social media, whether it's when you're speaking at a speaking engagement, when you're podcasting, whatever you do, those are the 3 E's. And if you can bring those 3 things every time you show up, it doesn't matter. You can't fail unless you're a total fucking loser and no one gives a fuck about what you're saying, which happens too.
It happens.
People are, I feel like we've had this conversation. We're not going to name names, but there's a lot of people that are legends in their own minds. Sometimes their mothers sometimes loft them up a little bit, fluff them up a little bit more, and they get, big dick energy. And
I know who you're. No. Well, we've talked about people.
Yes.
We're not naming names.
Naming names, even though I want to really, really bad. But there's a lot of people who are legends in their own minds, or there are people who steal and bite other people's shit.
Yeah.
They see like someone like, let's just say Dave, for example. They see someone like Dave and they're like, that looks easy. I can do that. Are you fucking high? Are you smoking literally the crack pipe? Like, it's not going to happen. And it's the same thing with me. I have a lot of people that want to do things about the word bitch and all that stuff. And I'm like, do you know how hard it is to market something that has a swear in it in the day and age that we're living in, where you literally can't even fart and you get fucking thrown off of social media.
We've gone through a bunch, even with the name of the podcast, or
gets
all of a
flagged.
sudden they decide, oh, you can't have bitch in the title of this.
Yes. Like even when I post on Instagram, which is like the last man standing in the social media arena for me, because I hate it. But I post like ambitchious or bitchapalooza or whatever, and then I'll go to post and it will say, do you really want to post this word? Because other things like this have gotten flagged and da-da-da. And you know what happens? As soon as I see that, I know that no one's going to see my post because they've already algorithmically kind of hushed me.
See, what I've found, Katie, is you use the capital B
and then an exclamation.
I use lowercase l.
Oh.
TCH, and it comes out looking close enough for
seriously.
People. Yeah.
And then it kind of fools them. They think they're so smart, but Ed and I have a master plan.
We're smarter.
We're smarter.
All right. So you want to, at this point, assume there's somebody we haven't talked out of doing this?
I don't. Yeah. I mean, you better get your fucking rubber underwear on if you're really serious about doing this. So if you have your rubber underwear on.
Part of it, too, is, you have to ask yourself, what are you willing to invest in this?
Oof. Talk about that, because that's another thing too. Is people go, I went on Amazon and I got a snowball mic.
Right.
What the fuck is it called? A hand job mic? What the fuck is it called? This is blue balls.
Blue Yeti.
The blue Yeti.
Blue snowball.
There's a blue balls.
But
they buy this cheap mic, which I did when I first started, and it was honestly it was worked.
It was okay.
But I will tell you one thing: I don't give a fuck, and we've had this conversation because Ed is a sound like technician angel,
right?
And he busts my balls about sound, and I go, Ed, who gives a fuck? And he goes, Katie, stop! I can't take this. Like you're killing me. You're killing me with the sound shit.
And listen, it doesn't have to be perfect,
right?
But it has to be good enough that it's not distracting from your content.
And this is the problem, right? So I've had so many podcasts that I listen to in the past that I love the content. It's the juiciest, ripest content.
And you shut some off.
Shut it off.
Yeah.
I wanted to like put, I don't even know what in my ears because it's like so fucking annoying, like the buzzing. Then you hear kids in the background crying. Then the dog is fucking barking. It's like, are you fucking people mongrels? Go into a room and say to your husband, watch the baby, keep the fucking dog out of here.
Or they're interviewing someone and they're at completely different volumes. And you're not going to sit there riding the volume knob. Nothing's worth it.
No. And especially if they use like Zoom or one of these things that don't have good audio, right? It's good for like, we're all in COVID and we have to like homeschool our kids. That's fine. But it's not good enough for a podcast that's listenable.
Right.
If that's even a word.
If you're in your car and that's all you've got going into your ears.
Help me.
The people sound like they're underwater.
Yes.
I'm just not going to put up with
I'm done. I have kiboshed so many podcasts in the past because of that reason. And then I like think about Ed because Ed's like, it has to be perfect. And I'm like, who gives a fuck? And then I hear someone's podcast and I want to like throw myself off a tall building.
I will say it doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be good enough that it doesn't distract from the content.
Yes.
Now, does that mean you need to spend $1 million for equipment? No, especially for a solo show. There's a microphone called a Samson 2QU. Mm-hmm. It's about $70.
Easy.
USB mic.
Yep.
But I do not ever recommend the Blue Yeti. That's a condenser mic. It picks up a lot of room noise.
Oh, yeah.
And background.
Don't even try to let out a one cheek sneak.
No.
It'll pick it right up. Just a little.
It'll amplify it.
And everyone knows you're just doing silent but deadlies in your closet.
So, I mean, that's the first thing. Then you've got to get some software to record into. Mm-hmm. And you can use something like GarageBand.
Oh God, no! GarageBand gives me anxiety because that was what I remember. I used to use GarageBand, and
it always seemed to cause problems.
Oh, every week I'd say, Ed, I can't do this anymore. I can't.
And there's free software called Audacity.
Yep.
But again, these are things that you're going to have to learn how to do if you do it on your own.
I think what you have me use, which is StreamYard, in my opinion, is the best because it's so easy to use on your own. And then to have guests, it's just like sending a Zoom link.
Yeah, and it's much better sound quality than Zoom.
Yes. Oh,
now, if
beyond.
they have internet issues, you're still going to have some problems with the sound, but it does not have the ongoing sound issues.
That's
that
also
Zoom
annoying
has.
when someone's internet is spotty and the person goes in and out when they're talking. It's like, oh, God, well, I just missed the most important part of the freaking podcast, you know?
So, I mean, that's the first step, but...
So get a good mic. Decent mic.
You need a decent
mic. Get some goddamn software that's usable and easy. Like I said, we use StreamYard.
Decent mic, goddamn software. Yes. Good start.
Write it down just as we said it. Decent mic, goddamn software.
So even if you use StreamYard, you're still going to need some kind of software to do editing on this.
Yes.
And
this is when my butthole starts to pucker and I start to cringe. As soon as you say the word editing, we're done.
So here's the thing. You're much easier than most people because you've been a professional speaker.
I've been told that.
Well, in this regard only. But you've been a professional speaker for a long time.
Yeah, so long.
So I would say 99% of what you send me doesn't get an edit in it.
No, I actually don't like edited podcasts either when they edit every and every ooh and every... I don't like that. See, there has to be this balance where it's natural, but it's not overly edited, but it's not like we're all in a bar room having a podcast.
Right. So most people cannot do a one-off with no edits.
I don't really do doubled unless someone fucks up.
Yeah.
Like I remember a couple of times, like I've had people like be like, "Did I said something bad that's going to get me canceled?"
Right.
And I'm like, if you really, really, really want Ed to edit it out, I don't feel like that's actually. People are just so sensitive now.
They are,
and they're scared, and a lot of people are scared to say the wrong thing.
Listen, if you're doing a good job with the conversation, people forget the context of the conversation.
Yes.
So they may say things that they perhaps shouldn't have.
Yes. We draw that out of them sometimes.
If you're doing a highly edited podcast, the amount of edit time will come out to about 4 times the length of the record time.
My God.
So for your hour, if we wanted to surgically edit that, that'd be 4 more hours.
Oh, no.
At my normal rate, that's $600.
Hello. Right. Absolutely. But that's the thing that I'm saying is people just think like they're gonna just roll up, do a podcast, and just not spend a dime, and it costs money to actually do it the right way. It
costs money or your time.
Yes,
right?
and you have to say time is money, right?
Yeah.
So I have to say to myself, okay, 4 hours, my rate is a lot, right?
Sure.
So it's like, would I rather just like go work, or would I rather be editing shit for free? Fuck that.
How do you want to be spending your time? Struggling through things that you don't know how to do.
Oh my God. And that's the thing too, is like when you don't know how to do it and you're teaching yourself, it's going to actually take you 8 hours.
Maybe longer.
Oh my. A whole, no.
So, that's one aspect of it. Then, to get started.
But there's people though that you can hire to edit your podcast.
There are people you can hire.
Yeah.
There are people who will do it cheaper than I will.
Yeah, but you're old school you're like, no. You're untouchable.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can get people.
Because people always say, well, can I hire Ed? And I go, no, he doesn't want to work with you. Because Ed only works with me because we have fun.
That's about it.
Yeah.
Because, for me, I'm at the point where
you don't need to do this
If it isn't content that I'm interested in anyway.
Yes.
I won't do it.
No, why would you? Because you have to listen to it.
Even your content.
Yes,
it's only fun just because you're, let's say a little out there.
Yeah. But you're not interested in all the things that we're talking about because a lot of it's very female forward, and you're just like, I don't even want to hear any of this.
I don't need to hear it,
But I get it.
I'm sleeping. I don't need to be woke.
Yes, we don't want you any more woke than you already are. No, that would be bad. That would be too woke, and that too woke is not good either.
No.
You got to find that balance with the wokeness.
So we haven't even started recording yet, right?
Right.
Never mind the assets you'll need for the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So you need a graphic.
Yes.
You need to decide what's the name of your podcast.
Right.
Oh, and by the way, do not put the or podcast in your title.
That's a good tip.
Well, listen, the way I like to...
like the Ambitchious Podcast. It's just ambitious.
It's just ambitious.
Yeah. Why do we have to do that?
Because when the search engine when you start searching for these things,
no, we're done.
And for podcasts, I'd like to say, well, did anybody ever say, or is the show called Seinfeld TV Show? Well, no.
It's the Seinfeld TV show.
It's just Seinfeld.
Just Seinfeld.
And
yeah, you're right.
People know if they're getting it on their podcast app, guess what? It's a podcast.
Yes.
Putting that in makes it
redundant.
Much more difficult to locate via search.
Yes.
Titles are very important for the podcast.
Because that's service engine optimization, correct? How you're going to get found.
The only things that get actually searched, show notes, no, not indexed.
So let's talk about that for a second, because a lot of people don't know what show notes are. So just tell people, just in a roundabout way, what is a show note for a podcast?
So this is basically the description of this particular
what we're talking about.
Right.
So on today's podcast, Ed and Katie are talking about how to start a podcast.
Yeah. And some people will go into minute detail.
Some people break it down by second.
Yep.
Oh, fuck you.
They'll have timestamps.
Who the hell has time for that?
It doesn't add a lot of value for the amount of effort because that stuff is not indexed for searching.
Yes.
And really, make all of the content of the podcast good. You don't want somebody looking at it saying, oh, I don't have to listen to
I'll just read the show
14
notes.
minutes. I'll just go down to this timestamp.
That's so true. And the only time you should really use the show notes is if you're like, say you're selling something or whatever. You say, hey, in my show notes are A, B, C, and D.
Right. And make goddamn sure if you're saying it's in my show notes.
It better be in your fucking show notes.
I can't tell you how many times I've listened to a podcast in the car and they'll say, oh, the link is in the show notes.
And you go and it's not there.
It's not there.
Fucking
and it's like, well, that's it.
amateur
I'm not
hour.
going back to try to get that.
No, I'm done. So
It's
you lose a sale.
Yep.
And then you're like, I'm trying to make money off this podcast and I can't even make money.
I was interested enough to want to click on
People
that.
are fucking dunces, aren't they?
They really are. But,
oh my God.
For the graphic, you probably want to have that done somewhat professionally.
Yeah.
Unless you happen to be a graphic artist.
Right. Some people's graphics are shit.
Yep.
I mean, I'm lucky because I always have good photo shoots and things like that. But most people, it's like they take their Olin Mills portraits from 1987 with the lightning bolts in the back and they try to make it their graphic.
Guess what? For most people, if nobody knows who you are,
no one cares.
Your photograph is not going to help.
Right. Unless you are sexy or hot or whatever. No one gives a shit.
You're ambitious or something.
Thank you. Duh.
But, I would say don't put a microphone in there. Oh. Don't put a headphone in there. It's cliched. It's been done. Move on from that.
Right. I agree.
Keep in mind that this is going to go down to a very small size.
Thumbnail.
Yeah. Well, and
even
on a
smaller.
phone.
Yeah. Forget it. Yeah.
So you want it to be recognizable.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it is about color.
Yes.
And people recognizing it because it's going to be hard to read.
Absolutely. 100%.
Choose your fonts so that the name of the show is discernible in that size.
Have you noticed a lot of female podcasters use all this squiggly, super like Edwardian scriptive writing? It's like, bitch, no one can fucking read that. We're not in the 14th century.
It's stupid. This thing should be functional, not artistic.
No. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I did Ambitchious, the podcast and the book, I wanted it to be just bold. And I don't even love the font of my book or the podcast because it's not but it's like functional. You look at that shit, it's Ambitchious. Yeah. Period. The colors, the whole 9 yards.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the actual picture of it. Let's get into the music because this is people like. Oh, I'm going to use Aerosmith's "Walk Like a Dude Looks Like a Lady." I go, you can't fucking do that, bitch, unless you have fucking $2 million to give them every podcast episode.
Right. So you cannot use copyrighted music in a podcast. People will say, "Well, my friend does it." Well, they haven't been caught yet. So if you have,
they will be caught.
And if you feel as though you have a chance of being successful, don't start down that path.
Don't do it.
And people will say, well, I heard from my friend, I can use 10 seconds. You can't.
Oh, yeah. They come up with all these little things.
It's a non-starter.
Yeah. This is not Super Mario Brothers. You don't have to take the thing out, blow in it, and put it back to make it work.
Right.
Like, stop making up all these, like, old wives' tales.
Guess what? Nobody's going to say, I'm going to listen to this podcast every time because it has 10 seconds of Aerosmith at the beginning of it.
No one cares.
It doesn't matter.
It's funny because I listen to a lot of podcasts that have like music made by someone.
Yeah.
Like I love Andy Frisella. Do you know Andy? He's crazy.
No.
He has the podcast. It's called the motherfucking CEO podcast. He's just wild. He's crazy. But he has a rap. And now I hear the rap and it's like I sing the rap like as if it's a rap on like your top 40 radio because it gets in your head. Just like my music now, because we used to have old music before and then we kind of revamped it, and now I have more like it's kind of like triumphant, kind of like half trap music, half like hardcore, whatever. And everyone's like, as soon as I hear that song, I get chills. I get ready for the podcast.
Just it. You know, you want to find something that there are things you can license for relatively cheaply.
Absolutely. Where do you get most of your music? Or where do you suggest for people to find kind of non-copywritten music?
I'd do a search for it because it's really more about what's the vibe that you're trying to put forth. So there are some copyright-free musics on YouTube, although some of those you have to be careful are really only for use on YouTube.
Okay. Yeah.
There are a bunch of free ones out there. I pay for a service, which I wouldn't recommend for somebody.
Yeah, not worth
you're
it.
Doing this for a living.
Yeah. But just pretty much Google non-copywritten music.
Yeah, and then there are some that, charge a one-time distribution fee. Like, over at the studio, the Quirky Dog.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what they they paid $75 to use.
Easy.
It's
one-time thing.
It's, again,
bing,
investing
boom.
in it.
Yeah.
And if it's the music that's the right vibe for your show.
Do you ever hear podcasts that the music sucks so fucking bad that you want to just like hurt yourself?
What the biggest problem is,
because I do,
is long intros that never change. Right? And
so annoying.
There's really no reason. Get to the content. That's
even mine's too long.
Yours is too long. We're gonna
fix
talk.
That.
I like the music.
But see, I'm a humble bitch. I'm like, yo, it's too long. Yeah. That's what we were doing 5 years ago.
And that was the style.
Let's figure it. Actually, you just hit the nail on the head. It was the style because every podcast that was kind of like in my genre was like, hi, I'm so-and-so. This is what I do. Yep. This is what I'm going to do for you. Let's all go together. Okay, ready, go. And now it's like.
What I tell people now is don't make me wait more than 20 seconds for content.
Because I want to go
20 seconds max, and
don't make me wait. And then you, right after you make me wait, you talk about your rubber underwear for an hour,
or you go right into commercial.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. It's like, today I'm wearing my rubber underwear, and this is where. Oh, shut the fuck up!
Oh, I didn't think they were even getting paid for the endorsement. I thought they were just
wearing their rubber underwear.
Yeah.
Like Tim Ferriss, Tim. Right. I love his podcast, but like. He fucks you in the ass with no lube. The first 16 minutes of the podcast is just like, this is what I sleep on. This is what I drink. This is the toilet paper I wipe my ass with.
If you get a good podcast app, you can skip the X number of seconds at the front of it.
Now, do they know algorithmically that you skip that? No. Because you know how sometimes it's like on YouTube, if someone skips the whatever they're selling or whatever.
No, on Apple Podcasts, they can see where the skipping happens.
Oh. So that's a good feedback for you to be like, yo, everyone skips through this shit. Maybe I should sprinkle my stuff.
If you look at the stats on Apple, you can see pretty clearly, for example, you might have a segment you do. Oh, my God, the listenership drops for that segment and picks up later. So you can start to look at those things for clues.
I think what I do is, I'm just being a braggy bitch, but I think what I do is smart because I don't sell, meaning I don't have sponsors, even though I could have sponsors.
Yep.
I would rather sell whatever I'm doing, meaning like, hey, you're listening to this podcast and you're loving it. Well, guess what? Bitchapalooza's this month. Or, hey, I'm starting A28P, or we're going to Portugal or whatever. And it doesn't feel salesy because I'm not like doing it like, hey guys, this is my big sales pitch.
It's part of your thing.
Yes.
Now, you have done things with codes in the past, and I would guess not much.
No.
Because if you're lucky, your engagement from that audience is 1% to 2%.
Yes.
And even if they go do it, Well, they're not going to keep using that code now.
No.
They're these people's
Yeah,
customers.
it's a code. So it's a one-time code, like for example, Life Boost Coffee, which I still use and I love, right? I still am a partner with them and I'm an affiliate with them, but I don't talk about it anymore. But
And part of it is add up what you ever saw in revenue from that and, was it worth bothering your audience for that?
Honestly, it's not. I would rather just like have the code. There you go. You want it, you don't. I don't give a fuck either way.
Yeah, and listen, if you're being greedy and it's clear to the audience that they're there to be monetized, the audience will shrink very quickly.
Yes, absolutely. People are so used to being sold to that I don't think it really feels awkward to them. But when they're here for a very specific reason, which is to listen to your content of the day, and then you're just like shoving that shit down their throat. Ugh.
So the first thing you have to do is give them value before you ask them for value.
Thank you. Say that again for the people in the back.
You must give them value before you ask for anything, right?
Yes.
Even I tell people at the beginning of the podcast, don't be telling them to go subscribe and like. You haven't given them anything yet.
Well, it's funny because I used to always read like my Apple. People would say like,
nobody cares.
No one cares, dude. I would literally give free shit away.
Yeah,
like thousands and thousands of dollars of swag and books and this and that. No one give a fuck. No one even thanks me. No, they were all ungrateful bitches. Like, no, I'm not doing it anymore.
Ratings and reviews are meaningless except for social proof.
Okay, this is another thing that I thought was so crazy because I always thought the more reviews you have on your podcast, like say, for example, Apple, because they're a huge reviewing platform, that you're going to get algorithmically more in people's faces, but that's not fucking true.
No.
And it doesn't mean anything.
No, I mean, they have their new and noteworthy, but that seems to be some super secret thing that you can't really discern. And a lot of it has to do with how many people are subscribing.
I think it's like they give hand
Apple.
jobs too.
Yeah,
it's a hand job thing.
Does it help you? Only if you have a good show and it gives you some exposure. But
and sometimes I see the new and noteworthy and I'm like, these people suck.
Yeah.
How the hell did they get here? These people blow. Their podcast sucks.
It doesn't mean it's good.
What? See, this is why I get so frustrated sometimes because people see this shit and they're like, well, I want to be like this person. I'm like, they suck. Stop trying to be like these people. Just be you.
Be you and make sure that you're putting out the highest quality content that you can.
Yes. By the way, as we're podcasting, because Ed's so fucking OCD, he keeps looking at all of the levels of everything to make sure that everything's perfect. And I just want to say I respect you and I commend you.
Listen.
Because it's my podcast and I'm sitting in a corner and I'm not even looking at anything right now.
You fed me lunch. You're good.
I keep seeing him look over and I'm like, he is fucking on it.
Yeah, I'm focused on that. So now let's talk about the next thing you should have, a website.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I love all these people that go, first I'm going to get a podcast, then I'm going to get the followers on social media, then I'm going to get a website.
No, you really want a website for your podcast, or if you have a professional website like you did, then you can piggyback the podcast on
I have like
there.
a podcast part of my website.
And I mean, the good news is if you're using a website just for the podcast, there's a very good service called Podpage.
Oh, I've never heard of that.
It's excellent.
Nice.
So you can basically take your RSS feed, which is from your web hosting company, which we haven't even talked about yet.
Oh, God, we got to get into that. Everyone's like, RSS, am I sick?
But you give them the RSS feed, they generate it all for you.
That's awesome.
So I don't know what they charge, maybe $20 a month.
Who cares?
But
better than you having to do that shit.
Or spending hundreds or thousands of dollars to get a web developer.
What do you think is like on average, just for like a run-of-the-mill person? No, I'm not talking about Joe Rogan. I'm talking about a normal, everyday Joe Schmo doing a podcast. What do you think is like the output money per month, like on average?
So
I know there's so many variables.
You're going to spend something for your website. Let's call it $20. And, could be a lot more, probably won't be a lot less. You should get a podcast host that you're paying for. Do not use Anchor. Free.
Everyone uses Anchor. I don't understand that.
Anchor sometimes tells them, well, we're going to get you sponsors. Well, no, they're not. And free is not a good business model.
Yeah. Last time I checked.
Yeah.
Doesn't really work.
No. So again,
If it's free, it's not for me. That should be everyone's mantra.
Right.
Because there's always a fucking catch.
I've heard people say, well, if it's free, then you are the product.
That's right. Absolutely.
I would spend the $20, $15 for that web host.
Yep.
This is $35,
Mhm.
right? So maybe you want to look at something like StreamYard. That might be another
It was
$20.
like a couple $100 a year for like the biggest package that there are. So let's just break that in $20 a month.
We're in the sort of $50 to $75 a month range.
I mean, if you think about an ROI that you're really going to put work into this, that's low money.
And look at it this way. Even if you get nothing back, what do your hobbies cost you?
Hello.
You're spending more than that per month.
Absolutely. 100%.
It's perfectly fine to do podcasting as a hobby.
Yeah.
If you enjoy it.
Some people just love to talk.
They do.
God bless them. I mean, I do love to talk, but I want to get paid to talk.
I know.
I'm not a broke out.
Your words are more valuable.
It's true, right?
No, I feel.
I mean, I
honored.
get paid a lot of money to speak in a public place. I mean, I might as well make some. See, I don't want to make money off the podcast. Meaning, like, I don't want to sell shit on the podcast. What I do is I use the podcast as like I give people value. I give them the 3 E's, and they fall in love with me, which. Some of them hate me and they just keep coming back for more, which is totally fine too. You're here, you're helping me either way, whether you're a hater or a congratulator. But at the end of the day, the people down the road are going to buy shit from me.
Yep.
And guess what? It's a win-win because they get serviced, they get value, and then when I do have something to sell, they open their wallets to me because they trust me and they know that I'm actually doing it for the right reasons, not to sell rubber underwear.
And the other one that always comes up, well, how long should my podcast be?
Oh, yeah. That's a good question.
As long as it needs to be.
Right. But don't you think that some people just talk just to talk?
They talk.
It's like, honey, you should have wrapped this up 20 minutes ago.
And that's the problem when they get in their head. Oh, I'm doing 1 hour. Well, if the last 20 minutes is repeating the same shit you said, you're making bad content.
Bad content.
I mean, we're not trying to fill a time slot on network TV.
Yep.
Perfectly valid to have 17 minutes one week and 50 the next
Some
week.
of the best podcasts that I listen to are like that. Like sometimes I'll see, 14 minutes on the podcast. I'll get kind of like, oh man, that's going to suck. It's so juicy and meaty.
Yeah. Well, you know why the Cigar Authority is 2 hours? It started as a radio show.
Yep.
And we had to fill the 2. And
yep.
It went on long enough where that's the audience expectation now. So
and they love it.
The 2.
They love it.
They love it.
They do. They do.
It's a lot. 2 hours is a lot.
Yeah. And Joe Rogan's podcast is about 2.5 hours.
3 sometimes.
Shitting me.
No.
Ay, man.
I mean, then you get into the other piece of it, right?
Yes.
Should I have a co-host?
Oh, good.
I mean,
sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I don't know.
One question is, well, can you carry it by yourself?
Yeah.
If you can, then do it.
Not many people can. I hate to say that. I sound mean.
Very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Even Dave Garofalo will say, when people are missing from the show, it's just harder.
It is.
It's a lot harder.
It's like a relay race, man.
But, then if you're going to get a co-host, the one thing I would recommend is talk about everything before you get a co-host.
Yep.
Who owns this thing? If there's money coming in, how are we going to split it? Blah,
because that causes some bad blood if things aren't put.
Down the line.
Absolutely. That's why I like on my podcast. I like to have Big Bernard shows up every so often.
Yeah. You don't pay him, right?
I mean, barely. Just in food. Just in
that ain't cheap. I've seen him.
No, he's a big boy. Just in food, but like he'll come on every so often. But when we were doing the podcast a while ago, he kind of came on just for fun and novelty. But then he was almost like syphilis. Like you couldn't get rid of them no matter. And then you started to get tertiary. Then your nose started to fall off, fingers and shit like that. And then I would want to do something by myself, and then he would just be on.
Right,
and I wanted to fucking kill him.
You banished him.
I did banish him. I did banish him.
Listen, people liked him, but it took the show in a different direction, which is not your intended direction.
Yes. So I like to have him on when we're talking about things with children because he's an expert, right? Or things in relationships because he is my husband, so we can have like that kind of conversation. But before COVID happened, he was on all the time. I think he kind of just, people loved him, right? They're like, oh, we love Big Bernard, we love Matt, blah, blah, blah. But it was hard for me because, and you know me, like I am very like, I'm saying what I want to say, I'm doing what I want to do. And then sometimes because of who he is in his own world, he's like, I can't say that, Katie.
Right.
I can't do it. What do you do? Don't say. And then he would like, and he didn't mean to do this to me, but I felt like he would tamp me down a little bit. Like I couldn't fully be Katie Boyd in all her regalia.
Well, and guess what? It changed the focus of the podcast to a couples sort of thing.
Yes. And that's not what we were trying to do.
No. It's a perfectly good podcast. It just wasn't what your original concept was.
And then that can cause, not that it did sometimes, and I'll be totally honest, like it started to sometimes cause like animosity and resentment because as you know, I would like plan this podcast out and I would work so hard and I would get it all together and then fucking
derailed.
Matt and he would just show up like, here I am, Big Bernard. And I'm like, motherfucker, you're just here to smoke with the boys and then go to lunch after. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
And I would be like, you fucker, you little fucker. And then I would want to fucking kill him. And I remember like we used to do 4 podcasts in a day. Yeah. And by the 4th one, boy. I was like raring to go.
Yeah.
And you know, there were some fist fights in the parking lot of Two Guys Smoke Shop.
I know. Some of those, those were tiring days.
Those were... For you and me, for everyone involved.
I had to put up with the both of you.
Oh my God, you're like, Jesus Christ. I didn't know I was getting this friggin' package deal.
As it got louder, I had to turn down my headset.
And then I would actually yell at him on set, like being like, you can't be on this podcast if you're not going to say what you really feel and think. And he'd be like, like giving me the eyes and shit. And I'm like, forget it. But COVID saved that. And now he comes on when I need him to come on. And it's better. But I know a lot of people... they are like, oh, I'm going to do a podcast with my husband. And I'm like, you might want to really rethink that unless you're doing a podcast, a couples podcast, right? Or you have a business podcast with your husband.
Like the quirky dog up at the studio. They work together, so they're used to that. But
perfect.
It is not necessarily the right environment to air out your issues.
No, unless that's your whole thing. Which that could be too.
Just fighting as a podcast.
People love stuff like that.
Brilliant.
Yeah. It's like Bad Girls Club. It's like Bad Girls Club. But even with a partner, like if you have a co-host, if one person is pulling the weight more than the other person, like if one person's the creative, you have to say, okay, I'm the creative and you're going to be the marketer or you're going to be this, because it's like bartering. I don't barter with people. And I have so many people that come to me and say, hey, I'll do your nails or I'll do your hair. I'll do this. Guess what? One of us always feels like trash at the end of the day.
Yeah.
One of us always gets fucked over in the department, either whether it's like time or whatever. I just don't want to get involved in that kind of stuff.
You know, it's interesting because I worked at Two Guys for a while.
Of course.
I had an employee discount.
Yes.
And then I left, just to consult on podcasting. And I said to Dave, I don't want that discount anymore. He said, of course you can. I said, no, I want you to pay me for the work I'm doing and the value of it. And I want to pay you for what you're doing for a living.
You said it.
It's always crazy when people think they should get a friend's discount. Motherfucker, you should support my business.
Absolutely.
Because you're my friend.
But do you know how many people do that?
Too many.
Even in my world, like, if I say my time is worth X and you're telling me no, we're probably not going to be friends. I'm probably going to fucking hate you.
That's right.
Because
don't argue with me because there are plenty of other people.
Yeah. It's all about worthiness. It's all about feeling worthy. Like, I talk about this all the time. And it's like, if you go get your hair done and it costs, let's say, $250.
Right.
But I charge $550 an hour. Mm-hmm. It's not fucking congruent. You have to give me 2 hair things for my 1 hour of time.
Sure.
I'm always going to end up with the shit end of the stick.
And you don't want to be in that sort of an unequal thing.
Yes. I'm glad you brought this up.
And, yeah. No, for me, that's a big one.
Yeah, I'm glad.
It's funny because, do you know Christine Hurley, the comedian?
Yes.
Yeah, the queen of Boston comedy.
Yes.
I ran into her and she said, come to my show. Tony V's going to be there. Yeah. We're doing a show next Friday. I'll get you tickets. I said, I don't want tickets. Well, you don't have to pay. I said, I want to pay. I want to support what you're doing.
That's right.
And she said, well, it really doesn't matter. I said, no, it does matter because the venue is going to look at how many tickets you sold.
Yes.
If you give all the tickets away.
And she's probably used to people going like, hey,
begging.
Christy, give me my tickets, bitch. You know, and it's like, fuck that, man.
No, the comedians especially are always shocked that I pay my way every time.
I'm the same
guess
way.
what? I want to support them.
Absolutely. I do that everywhere I go, and people think I'm weird, but like I've been fucked over so many times, and I just don't ever want to feel that way.
And, you know, I heard this actually, you know, David Chang.
Yes.
I was listening to his podcast, and he brought it up an interesting thing. When he goes to a restaurant, people are always trying to comp him.
Me too.
And,
all the time.
And, you know, his way of dealing with it, and what I do is that money just goes to the server as an additional tip.
That's what I do too. That's what I do too. I just don't ever want to feel like that person. And I know that maybe that's my own shit. Maybe that's our own shit. Maybe we need some inner child healing around receiving. I don't know really what it is, but I want to feel like at the end of the day, like, you know, I did what I needed to do.
I'll be honest with you. It took me a long time. You know, when people would give me gifts, I'd say you shouldn't have done. It took me a long time to just shut the fuck up and say thank you.
I'm the same way. I'm the same way.
Yeah.
Well, but gifts is not my love language.
Right.
Acts of service is my love language.
Well, and for me, sometimes you know the person can't really afford to give this to you.
That's right.
What they don't want is a lecture, though. Right. You know, just be gracious
I know.
and say, thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
It's hard, though.
It's difficult.
Yep. I 100% agree. Oh, my God. But I'm glad you brought that up because that's something that a lot of people don't talk about. They just are like, hey, me and my best friend from childhood, we're going to do this podcast about fishing. And I'm like, okay, who's doing what?
It's probably going to be a fucking disaster, honestly.
Someone's going to end up sleeping with the fishes by the end of it.
Yeah, you have to know who's doing what because guess what? Everyone's assuming the other guy's doing all the work.
Yeah, like Matt Babine.
Yeah, I'm just going to show up.
He's like,
man.
Oh, my God, you get to hang out with Ed and the guys. I get to smoke. We get coffee. And then we get lunch after. And I'm like, I am going to fucking kill you.
Oh, my God. How long have we been doing this?
I don't even know. Hold on. Let me check. An hour and 6 minutes. Yeah. We are in Joe Rogan territory at this point.
It felt like about an hour.
Yeah, but I love talking to you.
Well, and listen, we didn't really give people enough information. You're not going to get it in a 1 hour conversation.
No.
What I was hoping to do is give people some idea of the scope of what the commitment is to be successful doing this.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is if people are really interested in getting started quickly, you got to invest. Get somebody to help you do this. Because if you sit and try to do it yourself, you're probably never going to get the first episode out. And
do you know how many people I have that I coach, business coach, that want to do podcasts, right? Because I do podcasts. They're like, oh, I want to be like Katie Boyd. I want to do a podcast. They record it. They record sometimes 5, 6, 7 podcasts.
Never go out.
Never fucking goes out. Yeah. What the fuck is that? Are they pussies? Are they scared? What is the deal? It's not perfect. Procrastination. What is the fear?
A lot of the people is it's not perfect, right?
Who gives a fuck? I just told y'all that I sounded like an asshole on my first podcast.
Everybody does. And
who gives a shit?
You know, I do say to people, before you put the first one out, just record a couple. If you feel good about it, use it. If you want to try it again, but do not shoot for perfection because you're never going to get it out there.
I agree.
And you can't improve until you do it.
True. Do you think that when someone does a podcast, do you think they should also take that podcast and repurpose it on YouTube?
No, not to start.
All right.
Here's my theory.
Yeah, I want to know.
Is you got enough to learn. Adding video complicates it very significantly, especially now. What are you going to figure out how to edit video too?
Oh my God, Jesus Christmas.
A lot of it is get the content part down. Figure out how you're creating content. Figure out your point of view. Get yourself to a point where you're comfortable talking about these things. Get that all done. And then turn on a camera.
Yeah.
You're already almost there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you add all of that on top of everything else, it's really hard.
It's a lot. And people don't realize it's like most people are like, this is what people come to me and they say, I'm going to start a podcast. I need a Facebook page. I need to do TikTok. I need to do LinkedIn. I need to do Twitter. I need to do Instagram. I need an email list. It goes on and on and on. And I'm like, just fucking do one thing at a goddamn time.
You need to start.
Just start.
Going out and building all the social media assets for a podcast that does not yet exist. It's not
like
worthwhile.
Putting the cart before the horse, man.
Listen, the stuff's still going to be there. So,
and if you wanted to, like, for example, down the road, take your old podcast, make it into a sound file, upload it to YouTube, put a fucking thumbnail on it, call it a day. Who gives a shit?
Easy to do, and the reality is that even if it's on YouTube, a lot of people don't care about a talking head video.
Nope.
They're interested to see maybe what you look like.
Yeah.
But beyond that, what is the value in it?
And most YouTube that I listen to, I don't sit and watch a YouTube video. I'm cleaning, I'm cooking, and I'm listening to a YouTube video. I'm not like staring at the person.
Or I'm in a different browser page doing other stuff.
I have 10 tabs open and I'm listening. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the normal way that people just live.
And the problem too is once you introduce the visual element, and now you are video.
Now you're beholden to that.
If you're not careful, your audio suffers, right?
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden you're saying, holding up an object for them to, this does not translate into the headset.
That people don't think about that either.
No.
They're like, and they show like their whatever, and then it's like, what the I can't fucking see that. No. I'm on a walk with my baby in the park. I don't even know what you're talking about.
So I would say on the Cigar Authority, we get 10 to 20 times as many audio listeners as we do
I would have thought so.
We're just a bunch of old people smoking cigars.
Yeah, but they love it.
Aside from a freaky fetish, there's not much reason.
I would say that could be a freaky fetish, though. I'm not going to lie with that cast of characters on the Cigar Authority. Oh, my gosh. So funny. Yeah, I think that 98% of the people that are inquiring about starting a podcast should not do it.
I think you are correct.
And I know I'm a see you next Tuesday, but I'm just going to say it like it is. And I know we had this conversation before we even came on here. It's like, you probably shouldn't waste your time.
No.
And money and effort and brain cells.
But if you think through it all and, you think, well, I really want to do this.
Yeah.
As I say, I'm not taking new clients. I'd be willing to do an hour of consulting for people if they, after all of this, think, all right, I want real details on how to get started.
Yeah. I love that.
That's fine.
Let's put that in the show notes, how you can contact Ed for consulting on what, because you don't want to do all the bullshit you do for me.
No.
It's so funny. I have like all these people that I work with, like you, Kim Fox, whatever. And everyone that I work with is like, I will never do for people what I do for you. Like, no, I don't know if I've broken people. Like everyone's going to the knacker yard now because they're so overwhelmed.
Actually, you're easy.
Everyone, yeah, I am easy.
As a client,
Yes.
I mean, as long as you do shit well, there's no trouble.
I'm the kind of person who I want to make the least amount of work for the people I work with. Because I know what it feels like to be on the other end of that spectrum.
And yeah, I wouldn't have time for a client that, I want you to edit this, blah,
yes.
blah, blah.
But you could sit them down and say, here's the A, B, C, D, here you go.
Here you go.
Got it.
And, I can probably refer them to somebody, but nobody I know is inexpensive.
Yes. Yeah.
There are people who do this and make a full-time living.
And it's very painstaking, very picky work.
It is.
It's not like this, it's very
here's
tedious.
The thing, 4 times the record. I mean, because you have to listen. If it's an hour long, okay, well, there's the first hour is listening, but you're changing it as you go.
Yes.
Right? So there's a couple more, and then you got to listen again.
So, I don't even listen to my podcasts.
Nobody does.
Is that bad? I'm the one person that doesn't listen to a podcast.
And
it's like, I already fucking listened to it.
Listen,
the first time.
Part of it is I don't listen to the whole thing either.
You shouldn't. Please don't.
Well,
You might lose brain cells.
If I did that, I would have to charge you more money.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Because now all of a sudden, okay, well, there's an hour of me just listening to the whole thing.
Yep.
So,
and you can't just inactively listen. You have to sit there and you have to listen to every freaking thing, you know?
We've just got this dialed into the point now where, I can process all of this and then just spot check to make sure that things are okay.
And I'm a one and done, which you were saying to Matt. No one's a one and Katie has like a knack for that.
Just very occasionally you'll say it crashed and then I started again. But
it's usually the people on my podcast are like, I said something wrong. Can like he edit it and I'll like timestamp it and I'll say, Ed, whoever I had on the podcast at, 1 minute and 44 seconds said like, a racial slur. Can you like, what the fuck? Because people just say stuff that they don't even mean to say. And they're like, that could be bad.
That's an occasional extra minute, right? Because you got to do the edit, then you got to listen. If the edit doesn't sound natural.
Yeah. Because sometimes it doesn't. Like it just doesn't sound right.
No.
But yeah, I don't like that. I don't ever make you do stuff like that unless it's like dire. But I just shoot it out.
And you feed me when I come.
And I do feed you. Anything else that you want to tell the bitches out there that are thinking about doing a podcast? Any other like good tips, tricks, like advice, any little thing that maybe we didn't touch upon?
If you're thinking about doing a podcast, think again.
Check your fucking brain. Check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Think a third time. And be honest with yourself. It's not an easy thing. It's a lot of effort. And again, understand your why and what are you going to get out of it? Because if you're not getting something out of it, you're not going to keep doing it.
What's the point?
No point.
What's the point? I get so much out of it. Actually, I love meeting people and them saying like how much a podcast has maybe helped them.
Yep.
I get all these amazing stories and emails all the time. So for me, it's so fulfilling.
You get that part of it, but it also supports your business.
It does.
So, for you, it makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm. But for some people, it does not.
No.
And it's not cute. And it's a lot of work.
And as I said earlier, it's a valid hobby, but understand that
go get another fucking hobby. Go get a bike. Go get a bike. Get a fucking archery kit.
How about
golf.
A vegetable garden?
Yeah, fucking grow a victory garden. Whatever the hell you're into. But don't podcast unless you have listened to this podcast twice. Listen to everything Ed said because he definitely heeded a lot of warnings in this podcast. It was very Ides of March-esque. Okay. But we wanted to be really honest here because I have had so many people reach out to me or they just come up to me and they're like, I want to start a podcast too. And I'm like, oh, I want to just shake them and say, don't do it because it's so much work.
It is. And I would say somewhere around 95% of new podcasts do not make it past episode 7.
Shut the fuck up.
No.
What?
No, even the ones that get started can't sustain it.
Why do you think, though? They just get like, oh, I can't do this anymore.
Can't do it anymore. Doesn't fit into their schedule. They ran out of ideas, any number of things.
Oh, my God.
There just is a very high failure rate even after starting.
Wow. So for me, I actually I'm good.
You're well beyond.
I've been doing it almost 5 years, so it's pretty. There was times in COVID where I had no choice because I had nothing. And then when we would go to order something, be like, yes, you have to wait 17 weeks for this thing to come in,
And, another interesting stat when people get caught up in numbers, I haven't heard the exact number. Libsyn, one of the hosts, puts stats out, but if you're getting more than 26 downloads, you're better than 50% of the podcasts out there.
No way.
Yeah. So
what?
There's a lot of junk out there.
Holy shit. That's that's actually makes me feel good.
Yeah.
Not that we're just getting that, but.
If you can monetize at 5,000 downloads makes you better than 90% of the podcasts out there.
And then the podcasts that are like huge, like the Joe
ones
Rogan,
that are huge,
they're just forget it.
But if you're at that 10% level before you can even get $100 for an ad, that's what you're up against.
Wow, how incredible, huh?
Yeah.
Not to deter anyone from podcasting or nothing. Oh my God, Ed, this was so fun.
I had a great time.
This was great. I loved it. I think you should come on more often. You're just a just a big ball of wisdom.
I'm a breath of fresh air.
You really are.
Yeah.
And you're so smart and you're so wise and you're honest and truthful. And I feel like that's a respectable thing because I think in this industry, so many people blow so much smoke up so many people's asses.
There's a lot of charlatans, like any other. They'll tell you, okay, this is the way you have to do it, and I'm going to get you this many downloads. And
there's a whole thing too. Like all these people always contact me, like I can help you get more downloads if you come with our company. And
they're all full of shit.
Bullshit artists.
Yep.
Anything that's like PR and all that crap, they're all just want to take your money. Honestly, they don't. There's nothing really. It's just a fucking waste of time, money, and effort. Honest to God. I hope that no one podcasts.
And listen,
unless you're really fucking serious,
you really don't have to worry about the competition because even if you look at something and there are 10 other podcasts with the same topic, what you're bringing to it is your unique viewpoint.
Yeah.
And people tend to think of podcasting as competitive. Well, it's not network TV.
I have never, ever thought about my competitors ever. Like, obviously, I know that there's certain people in my space that I'm like, I look up to and stuff like that.
But I bet you have an overlap of listeners. People listen to more than one podcast about the same
I think
topic.
I have about 10 podcasts that I listen to, and they come out on different days, so I never run out of content to listen to.
And you can say they're all in the same space, but every host brings a unique viewpoint.
I had a girl reach out to me a couple months ago, and I don't know this person. She just was a listener. She's like, "Did you know that there's another podcast named Ambitchious?" And I was like, "No, I don't give a fuck." Like, I never Google that shit, right? I never search it. But I just thought it was funny. I was like, "Oh, I wonder who this broad is." She's like Norwegian or some shit, and it's in like some other language. I don't remember. She's Swedish or something like that. I don't give a fuck.
Maybe it's a real Swedish word.
Oh my God, what if it was?
Some kind of a fermented fish or something.
Could you? Oh, I love that. Ambitchious with some sauerkraut. Could you imagine? But I was just like, who gives a fuck? No. I'm not going to go sue this poor Swiss lady, the Swiss Miss Coco
used to
girl.
Be from Sweden. Now she's from
I don't know. She's from some S word. Slovakia. She's Slavic.
She's from Shit-town.
She's from Shit-town. I don't even know. But I was like, it's so funny how people look at competition for me, but I would never go and look for that because I feel, and I don't know if you think this is right or not, but I'm very like blinders. I get up every day. I don't give a fuck what anyone else is doing. I'm like, Katie, what does Katie motherfucking Boyd have to do today to push the needle forward?
Absolutely.
That's all that other shit is just a distraction.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do this podcast, whatever podcast it is, it could be whatever you're into, really think about everything that Ed said, because like I said, 5 years ago, they tried to talk me out of podcasting. They were like, why do you want to do this? This is crazy. You know how much time this is going to be. And I just felt such a pull to do it. And I'm so glad that I stuck to my guns and I just did it because it's been an awesome time for me. I love doing it. And I think that I've helped so many people and I've reached so many people all over the world that I would never have being able to reach.
No, that's a fun part of it.
When you show me, like, listen to all the people in all the countries that are listening to you, and I'm like, this is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
But, it's going to be work, and it's going to be sacrifice, and you can't be a broke hoe. You actually have to invest in things. I'm not telling you to go get like the microphone that we were doing when we were using that microphone when we were recording my book.
Yeah, I mean, that was...
it was like gold plated and like Lena Horne sang out of it in like the 1940s.
$1,500 microphone. Yeah.
Right. We're not telling you to go get that kind of stuff, but like really think about the time investment, the money investment, and just like, are you in this for the right reasons, and are you in this for the long haul? And then make your decision. And then once you make your decision, don't quit before the miracle happens, because that's what everyone does. Yeah. And it's so sad to watch. But thank you, Ed, for being on the podcast. I appreciate you so much. I know all the girls in Ambitchious Land are so excited to have heard your voice on this. And let's do this more often, because it was really fun.
We will.
All right. Listen, guys, this was so freaking fun. I cannot wait for you guys to not podcast or maybe podcast. I don't know what's in your future, but make up your fucking mind and do it for the right reasons. And in the meantime, don't forget to stay ambitious.